Well, there we go, Bears fans. We'll give it a couple minutes so that everybody can filter in, but the Chicago Bears have lost an emphatic 35 to 13 here on Christmas Eve. And honestly, they're not to steal exactly what Adam Johns said about the game, but don't overreact to this one. It's okay. We're in the middle of a rough season. The Bears are down. They're not just their number one, not just their number two, but their number three receiver as well. So all three top receivers out. They're down their starting center in Lucas Patrick. They're starting right guard in Tevin Jenkins. They're starting left guard in Cody Whitehair. And they even lost their backup right guard in Michael Schofield halfway through the game. So that's not even to mention the fact that I don't think Leatherwood got any time today, but it's a rough day for the Bears offense. It's a rough day for the Bears defense as Jalen Johnson just got shut down due to injury. And I understand that doesn't make anything any better. All this sounds like it's a whole bunch of excuses, but the gist that I guess I'm trying to communicate here is that an already poor Chicago Bears team got worse. And they lost to one of the best teams in football. If anything, I feel like a decent takeaway from this half is that the Chicago Bears willed their way to taking the first half away from Buffalo, and then they got smoked, and that's all right. I'll give everybody just a couple more minutes to filter in here, and then I'll record a solo show. Nothing particularly complicated, but honestly, Joe, you mentioned that this team is years away from winning. I just don't know if I agree. They were a couple decent plays away from beating the 12-1 at the time Philadelphia Eagles just last week. They were winning going into halftime against this Buffalo Bills team. It is easy to look at 35 to 13, a spanking, and think that, wow, this team couldn't win a game if they tried. But I just don't think that that's the takeaway here. I really don't. This is a team that was already bad, and now they're an even worse hurt team, and they still played relatively competitively. They've got a ton of money to spend in the offseason. They may end up with the first overall pick, depending on how that Tennessee Texans game works out. Let's see. Right now, it looks like Texans are still down 4, but I'm not saying they're going to win a Super Bowl next year. Absolutely not. I am saying that next year, the goal is going to be to compete for a wild card spot. The year after that, the goal is going to be to take a step forward wherever that lands. We'll see what happens. But I actually think the future is pretty bright. I think the fact that they're continuing to complete these losses, as strange as I know that sounds, is a legitimate good thing for Chicago. But I've talked enough. Let's dive into the show. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bear With Me, a Chicago Bears podcast hosted by yours truly, Robert Schmitz, right here on the Windy City Gridiron podcasting channel. And it's just me today, though I'm not interviewing myself on this Christmas Eve Bear With Me special. I hope you're having a wonderful holiday season, whatever you celebrate, but the Bears will not be celebrating as they've just finished up a 35 to 13 loss that honestly was a lot closer than the score suggests. Now, moral victories aren't going to make anybody particularly enthusiastic, but this is a Bears game and a Bears team that is now down. Last I checked, it was 7 starters. I'll count them out for fun. We're missing, obviously, Darnell Mooney, but also Chase Claypool, Equinemius St. Brown, Lucas Patrick, Cody Whitehair, and Tevin Jenkins, so I guess 6 starters. Then if you count the fact that they lost Michael Schofield and now have a backup playing that spot, we're missing a 7th. So with Dieter Iselin stepping in that in that early first quarter, things just started to fall apart. And I understand that you got to make do with what you got, but past a certain point, when you're playing the second-ranked defense in points per game, there's only so much you can do. The Bears had a wonderful first drive, attacking the edge of a Buffalo defense that was apparently unprepared for it. But other than that, they kept their defense, they kept the Bears offense in check. They kept the Bears, or the Bills defense kept the Bears offense in check. They kept Justin Fields in the pocket. Certainly had Tremaine Edmonds, a spectacularly athletic linebacker, spying Fields the entire game and able to take away some of his legs. They pinched the pocket really well. You especially saw that later with both tackles getting walked back into the pocket, giving Justin Fields not a ton to step up into. I thought Fields, given the circumstances, played relatively well, but honestly, this isn't going to be a game where we're going to have to get the magnifying glass out on the all 22 to figure just about anything out because the broadcast footage was unusually unhelpful as the Bears ran a lot of downfield concepts, or at least their receivers were running out of the picture, and it's hard to tell who wasn't open. Was Fields not pulling the trigger? Was just nobody open downfield? Anything is believable at this stage, and we're just going to have to wait and see. Look, it's not that I'm trying to tell you that this was a banner day for Chicago. Any day where you lose by 22 points is never a good one. But when the team was already 3-11, moving to 3-12, not only doesn't bother me, it feels to me like they got that little bit closer to the number 2 overall pick. And like we said in the pre-show, they're even potentially vying for the number 1 pick, depending on what the Texans do in their game against the Titans, which has yet to resolve. So I look at a game like this. I think that a defense that was now down, so they're down Eddie Jackson, they're down Jalen Johnson, they're down Kendall Vildor, they're down Jack Sanborn. They obviously traded Roquan and Robert Quinn. Like both units are on the Bears on our offense and defense were relatively shorthanded today. And I thought that the defense was incredibly inspiring. I mean, honestly, I really did. Up until the fourth quarter, they had held Josh Allen to more turnovers than touchdowns. They were feisty, managed to force a lot of situations the Bills didn't want to be in. And then at the very end of the game, yeah, they got run over. I mean, starting at the second half, a bad defensive line got taken too. I mean, Singletary and Cook both broke loose for very, very long touchdown runs that they were coming. If you've been following this channel at all, you know that this defensive line is nothing inspiring in the way of run defense, and the Bears were committed to pass defense, which is part of how they were able to slow down a Bills offense that loves to pass the ball. But once the Bills committed to a few extra runs in the game, they were able to generate some huge explosive plays, obviously scored on plenty of them. They picked up 8.2 yards per carry on the ground. That's not a typo. Devin Singletary had 12 carries for 106 yards, 8.8 per average. James Cook had 11 carries for 99 yards, so that's a 9 per carry average. And then Josh Allen picked up 41 yards on his 6 totes for 6.8. That is not a way to win a football game when you're giving up, I mean, not just 5, not just 6 yards per carry, but over 8 yards per carry. And at some point, this loss was just a matter of when, not if. And the fact that the Bears were able to keep it a game that was within one score for as long as they were is where I find something a little bit impressive when you're going up against a clear Super Bowl favorite. Look, I understand the score is massively skewed in favor of Buffalo, but I feel like when you look at these rosters, yes, health affects everybody, and I understand that. But when the Bears' already poor, talent ridden, or like talent bereft squad takes on a Super Bowl favorite down about 10 starters, what did we think was going to happen? And instead, on Christmas Eve, we got a sweet Velus Jones pass down the field where it was fun seeing V12 do what he should have been doing. I don't want to say all along, but at the very least, do what we would have hoped he would do as a third round pick. Run away from from the defense and give Justin Fields somebody to throw to, and that throw really couldn't have been much better. We saw Justin Fields hang in tough pockets, navigate pressure, and place balls into the flat to both Cole Kmet and Dante Pettis, as well as a couple others that probably should have been caught. And so the receivers letting Fields down on a day like today, even though we're talking about a day where I believe Justin Fields did not hit his passing prop of 135 yards, confirming now, yes, he ended up with 119 yards. That's 5.2 yards per throw, or yards per attempt, that is. But while it's not a banner statistical day for Fields, he kept himself out of trouble, certainly didn't throw any turnover-worthy passes until the very end of the game, where he lofted that one up that was luckily deflected by by the Bills' own defender. But all that to say, I came away thinking that this game, honestly, like I can't say I'm outrageously encouraged. When I say I'm encouraged, it's like I guess I'm more encouraged than discouraged. But really, this was pretty ho hum. This was about as chalk as I think chalk will get. A very good team walked into Chicago on a frigid day, both teams having experience playing in the elements, and the better team won, and they won by quite a bit. they piled up scores, certainly in the fourth quarter. I don't particularly care about running the score up. That's not really what matters in this case. But it does feel like a game that was mostly 21-13 became 35-13 in a flash, and I think it changes the story just a little bit. Though the better team planted the dagger and then they planted it again. I do feel like Justin Fields is getting better. I'm glad he came out of this game healthy. He didn't take a ton of hits. He didn't run the ball much. The Bills came out with a plan and showed just how much this Bears offense needs talent and frankly needs to probably manage the game a little bit better. But it's tough because I see a lot of people, myself included, that are critiquing Luke Getsy's game plan just in the fact that on both so immediately after the Velus Jones play action shot, 40+ yard passing play, the Bears responded with a run, another run, another run, and then finally a pass on fourth down that, if I can be honest, Ryan Griffin catching the ball on what looked like a sight adjustment where, remember, he's running a crossing route, so he sees a defender sitting in shallow zone coverage and understands he's got to throttle that down and turn back to the quarterback. Justin Fields puts the ball on his inside shoulder upfield. I would love to see Ryan Griffin catch that ball and fall forward immediately instead of relying on an extension. But what can you do? You're talking about a replacement level second string tight end, even though it's a tight end on DB matchup that a lot of football guys will draw on the whiteboard and circle and say, we liked it. It's a throw that I would love to see Justin Fields make again because that's the right read when you're trying to convert a fourth and short. If that's what the defense gives you, take it. That's a high percentage throw. Obviously, they got a completion. Bummer it didn't work out. But seeing Getsy go run, 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 pass, then they give the ball back to the Bills. The Bills throw a very quick interception. Josh Allen did not have a particularly good day. And then they immediately follow that up with, if memory serves, run, 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 field goal that time. I need to go back and check the tape to be absolutely sure. But Getsy seemed to call this football game like the Bears were winning by at least a score, if not two scores, even though they were down. And I understand this is exactly how they got back into the Dallas game. They treated it like it was any other situation. They ran the snot out of the ball. They clicked out yards on the ground and they found ways to score to eventually get them back in a game that then got away from them. But in this one, it just didn't work. And obviously, when you spend 3 hours watching a football team that seems to throw away a lead by giving the ball to a ground game that averaged a paltry 2.8 yards per carry. And that's really only spearheaded by the fact that David Montgomery was the only back to crack 10 yards. Herbert went 7 yards for 6 carries, like 1.2 yards per carry average. Look, yards per carry isn't everything, but the ground game, especially in the second half, was extremely unproductive. Put the passing game, which was already on life support, in tough long gain situations, and the Bills seemed to come out with a really good plan that the Bears just had no answer for. I think this Bears offense is going to need some serious work. I don't think that that's a surprise to anybody, whether you're on this channel or you're new, or whether you've been on this channel before or you're new to the channel, because the Bears need a lot of talent in their passing offense, and their passing concepts, frankly, need a little bit of investment. They've invested a lot into the running game, and it didn't pay off for them today. But when you're on what very well may be somewhere between your 6th and your 8th offensive line combination of the season, you're going to struggle against a defense that's known for stopping the run better than just about anybody in the NFL. So I feel for Luke Getsy. Obviously, today's game plan didn't work, much like watching the game plan in the second half against the Green Bay Packers. But the result is chalk. It's a loss. It's 13 points against a very good defense with just about nothing to speak for on offense. And if anything, I do think there's a little time that ought to be spent on the defensive side of the ball. I feel like Jaquan Brisker and especially Kyler Gordon are starting to come into their own. Kyler dropping out of cover 3 to pick off Josh Allen early in the game in the end zone was really fabulous to see. You saw him immediately drop off the line. He understands that he doesn't have somebody in his zone, and that means that in a standard cover 3 defense, you've got to check for a crosser coming to you and gain depth, so drop off the line to stop wherever that crosser is. Josh Allen never seemed to see number 6 and lofted an easy interception for Gordon, who was in the right place because his zone eyes are getting better. That's, I think, a lot of fun to see. Um, it's nice to see the way that different defenders, honestly, like Nick Morrow made a play. I think he's earned a play here and there, which is a lot of fun. I think that Jaquan Brisker didn't make any specific plays, but I didn't see him make any specific mistakes. Though I guess with the long runs, it begs the question on what were the Bears doing. But they played a lot of cover zero in that first half. The Bears are getting aggressive. Kudos to Alan Williams, who's been critiqued for being extremely conservative early in the season. They're doing a lot of what's called cover zero. So that means no safeties back, right? They're pushing everybody into the 5 to 10 yard box and stashing everybody in those like short area zones so that if you don't get home or on a run blitz, you don't fit a specific gap, you're going to give up a big play because there's just nobody back there to stop you. And on both the Cook runs and the Singletary runs, it did look like they were in some form of cover zero because there was just no safety anywhere near the play. I think Noah Blackwell deserves a hat tip at the nickel spot. He and Jalen Jones they're looking like very solid zone corners. I think Blackwell a little more so than Jones because that nickel spot is a lot harder in a cover 2 defense than that cover 2 corner spot that Jones, I don't want to say he's excelled in, but certainly he's looked like, at the worst case scenario, somebody who could compete for a depth spot in the future. It's always hard for me to come to conclusions about defensive backs after watching a broadcast tape because we just don't know what the defensive backs were doing on some of these plays, but that's how it goes when we're in a post-game podcast. We got a hat tip to somebody, and I just can't pick anybody on this defensive line. It's a defensive line that has rotated through replacement level players, and they get victimized on a week-to-week basis when they're not given tremendous run support, usually 7 to 8 man boxes. They tend to struggle, and they certainly did today, where they were asked to carry a little bit more of the weight in the run game because the Bills love to pass. They're one of the most pass-happy offenses in football. So the Bears played DB-based coverages or nickel packages a lot to try to sit back and defend against what the Bills were doing. And they got run on whenever the Bills handed the ball off. So not a great defense, or like not a great game for the defensive line, but that's part of the reason there's so much conversation surrounding both free agent and draft additions to that defensive line. I think Bears fans at this stage know that's just a position that needs a complete rework. And while that's 4 holes they've got to fill, at the very least, I don't think we're hanging on to hope that, say, Justin Jones is going to be a key part of the future. Maybe he'll be a depth piece. I mean, I could see it, but I don't think he's going to be the starter on a particularly good team. Now, I do see a little bit of conversation surrounding if Luke Getsy is going to call a game this way, why on earth are we playing Justin Fields? And I just can't imagine explaining to a professional football player, hey, we're going to try to lose these games, so just go ahead and sit on the bench. We'll get back to you next season. I don't think that would sit well with just about any locker room, especially when you're a leader like Justin Fields is. Yes, that's something that I think a lot of people would call somewhat hokey, especially once you start diving into, say, nerd metrics or whatever you want to call it. But you got to remember that this is a locker room full of football players. And every time Justin Fields gets the chance to rear back and chuck the ball downfield to Velus Jones, and Velus Jones gets the chance to prove himself down or as a downfield threat, I end up thinking it's a net good. Yes, Fields is taking hits. Yes, he took 2 more sacks on the day, which is a marked improvement over the 6 sacks he took last week. But even simple plays like 1st and 10, finding Kmet open on the sidelines in the flat and putting a ball, stapling it to his face that he drops. That's still a win and worthwhile development from a quarterback perspective. Or one was it 3rd and 5? I'm pulling directly from memory. Finding Dante Pettis on a similar play where he hits him or he hits Dante Pettis as who tries to breadbasket a ball placed perfectly over his outside shoulder that Pettis can't haul in, and the Bears don't convert a first down on account of it. These are negative results, but they're positive plays from a quarterback perspective as we try to see Justin Fields get a little bit more comfortable going through progressions in pockets that are rarely steady pockets. I think seeing Justin Fields manage this situation is net better. I'm not seeing him develop any extraordinarily bad habits at this point, which he would have been well within his right to do. Yes, he understands that he's got to play hero ball, but it looks like Fields is recognizing when opposing or defenses are spying him and understanding that he's got to make plays from the pocket to pay those defenses off when they treat him like that. He tried to today. It didn't seem like the wide receivers were up to task, but again, when you were already pulling somebody off the Packers practice squad and starting them in Equanimeous St. Brown, and you're even down that guy, what are you working with other than the definition of replacement players? I think that Velus has a long road to go. I know that he had a relatively good game today. I mean, really, all he did was return a couple of kickoffs very, very well. Had some really nice returns there, and obviously had that 40-ish yard pass play down the field. But he looked so lost in the Philadelphia game that while his speed was always going to give him certainly a 2-season leash. I mean, let's be clear. There's only so bad, or a rookie could be as bad as possible, and still they could easily take a step forward the next year. That's how NFL off seasons work. But this was a little glimpse of what Velus could be in the future. Gadget special teams guy, threat down the field, helps try to pry defenses open and allow other receivers. I'm looking at you, Mooney. I'm looking at you, Claypool, to flourish more in that underneath and intermediate zone. So you've got Velus running down the field, getting open in the deep half of the field, so like beyond 20 yards, and maybe Claypool and Mooney eat more in that 5 to 20 yard region, and then they probably could use somebody a little better to eat in that underneath line of scrimmage to 5 yard region. But there you go. And of course, Velas's acceleration and speed look awesome. I'm actually not trying to not take his back. I just thought he was a player that could easily fit in as a burner from the slot, just like he was today from Jump Street. And I would love to see him understand wide receiver a little bit more so that he doesn't look quite as lost as he did against Philadelphia. But he's always had legit speed, and it's nice to see that legit speed pay off in another positive offensive play, much like the sweet route he ran against Dallas, and he just couldn't haul it in. If he can start catching some of these passes, I mean, he could be a guy that catches you 25 passes a game for like 350 to 400 yards, and all 25 of those passes are relatively dangerous, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. Look, this game is not a game that I came into with much expectation, and sitting there after the first half, I thought the Bears might just pull something off that was magical. They didn't, and that's okay. Frankly, I think it's net better for them that they didn't, because now they're one step closer to a top 2 pick. And I have to say top 2 at this stage because we just don't know. The Houston Texans look like they may very well be right about to take the lead. Yep, there it is. 2:52 left in the fourth quarter, and they have taken the lead over the Titans. They beat them and the Nick Foles led Colts, and suddenly they've played their way out of the number 1 overall pick. But we'll have to just wait and see on that. Overall, it's a game that Justin Fields both entered and left healthy. He threw a touchdown. He did not throw an interception. That's a net positive. The Bears offense, it needs work. It needs schematic and talent work. And I do think those two things blend together. I don't think you can necessarily trot out one of the most modern offenses in football with no offensive line to block for longer developing concepts and no and no receiving talent to win one-on-ones or run option routes consistently. That's a great way to fluster your quarterback. So look, maybe I'm being giving, but I do feel for Luke Getsy in this situation because there's just not a ton that's going to work with receivers that largely weren't there for training camp. Yes, you have guys like N'Keal Harry and Velus Jones, but both were injured for relatively large portions of camp. And so all you've got is Dante Pettis and I guess Nasimba Webster, if you want to count him, but I really don't. So this is a complicated team to watch. It's a team that was bad got hurt. So now it's a hurt bad team with a quarterback that we really like. But thoughts of benching him, I think, are a bit extreme. It's the holidays. I'm glad that he was able to make a couple of highlight reel plays for us against one of the best teams in football. The Bears get the Lions coming up and the Vikings after that, which, if nothing else, should be more visually or like more visually interesting games to watch compared to watching the Bears up against a Super Bowl favorite. But we're just going to have to wait and see on what those look like. Have a wonderful holiday season, Bears fans. I'll see you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. as we talk through this game's all 22. Yes, there are going to be interesting things to talk about. And until then, bear down. And thanks so much for bearing with me. Okay, I got a couple of minutes. I did want to address some comments in the chat because, Chris, like you're saying, Getsy was incompetent. You're totally right. I mean, the problem is that from an offensive coordination perspective, I'm trying my best to think of everything top down, right? So you're working with nobodies at wide receiver. You're working with nobodies on offensive line. That's not the dunk on Braxton Jones. Just the average offensive line pedigree that you're working with is not very good in a game like this. You're playing guys out of position. You're hackneying whatever you can just to get a starting offensive line together. And it's easy to forget that Sam Mustipher, though he's been playing in center for pretty much the entire season, is still the backup center. So you're looking at an entire backup interior offensive line and a second attempt right tackle who displaced Borum to start the season. You're looking at wide receiver 4, 5, and 6 starting as wide receiver 1, 2, and 3. And most of these guys, you're trying to call plays that they're not going to, for lack of a better word, just go out and screw up. So as I understand from a results perspective, it's flat out bad. You are not going to hear me disagreeing with you, Chris. It's more to say that when you think about it from, okay, what were they able to get installed? What were they able to get 11 guys running at the same time? What were they able to get everybody executing at any level whatsoever that was a considered a passable offense? And then they were in training camp, when they were designing the offense, what did they design was going to be what did they design was going to be the primary threat here? Did they explain to these receivers that they were going to pass and run in balance? I doubt it. I think they were always going to be a run heavy team this season. I agree with you, Christian, that the pass selection, run, pass after the 50-yard pass is just absolutely brutal. I said so on Twitter, but it's also especially brutal, Christian, because the Bears didn't get the yards, right? Had they gone run, and picked it up on third down, everybody goes, but okay, at least it worked. And we've been here before. This is very similar to talking about the Packers game, right? But I also understand it from a Getsy perspective, where we saw what the Bears were trying to do at 28-13 when they dropped back 4 times in a row and they netted losing 4 yards. So I don't know, Christian. I sit here and I'm like, how much better really was the passing game going to be when it seems like the Bills did a really good job spying Justin Fields, like a very, very good job spying Justin Fields. It's Don't hear me caping for Getsy. Hear me saying, no, it totally wasn't good, but that doesn't make me out on him because we don't quite know what he's going to do when he's got talent. Am I enthusiastic? It's not really the word I'd pick. I mean, I don't think Luke Getsy's been I don't think he's been bad. I don't think he's been good. I would give him a very clear, large, bolded, incomplete grade for a season like this because when you don't have a tool to work, let me put it this way. What does the Packers offense look like without Devontae Adams? Well, so far this season, I think we'd agree it kind of looks like a mess, right? The offense, especially lately, has become, hey, Christian Watson, go do something because I'm not looking anywhere else. And so when you don't have Devontae Adams, surprise, a lot of your short yardage, a lot of your go get me one, a lot of your gotta have it down calls just change. And they don't necessarily change for the better because you're trying to lean on your offensive strength. Well, what is your offensive strength right now? I guess it's Justin Fields' legs, but you could even say it's nothing, and I'd believe you. I mean, the Bears are better at running the ball than they are at passing the ball, but with this offensive line, they're not good at that either. And especially going up against one of the best run-stopping defenses in football, there's an aspect of what did you really expect to happen, right? I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that this is like good offense. Don't hear me defending that. This isn't, oh, well, it would have worked if not for blank. It's more like, Okay, they're playing backups on backups. The coach is trying to call a sane game plan. Like you are a bad coach if you call a play call that your team cannot execute. If you call an inside dig for Dante Pettis and you know he gets bullied at the top of his routes against a physical corner, and you know he's just going to get pantsed out there, then all you're doing is hanging your quarterback out to dry. And like Agent Mole is saying, there are little hints. I mean, Agent Mole, to use an example, like, are there hints of a good offense? It's hard to tell, but there's certainly hints of Justin Fields being able to rescue a play call, which is awfully exciting going into the future. So if the Bears go out there, honestly, if they, I'll use a silly example that I do not expect to happen, right? In fact, I don't even know if I would be or outright supportive of getting DeAndre Hopkins, but let's pretend the Bears traded for DeAndre Hopkins just so I could use an example. Do you think the offense would change to fit the fact that DeAndre Hopkins joined the offense? I think it would. I think that's normal. If the Bears traded for Tyreek Hill, do you think that they'd call this same offense? No way. I mean, look at what the Bears did for Allen Robinson. Look at what they did without Allen Robinson. They didn't throw to oh gosh, they didn't throw to Javon Wims. Just because he was close to Allen Robinson and they had all the Allen Robinson packages ready. It's not that simple. You call plays to try to feature players and to try to feature good parts of your offense. The Bears right now just don't have a good part of their offense. If anything, like somebody mentioned, I think it's Cody, about how poorly Josh Allen threw the ball. I want to go to bat for the Bears defense, giving Josh Allen as rough a shakedown as they were able to give him. Kudos to them. That's not that easy. It's not to say Allen's been perfect this year, but he's been better than that. And so seeing him come back with a 55 QBR is really something. Looks like the Texans may, by the way, close it out. Like they're 3 timeouts away from closing out their second win of the season. So here we go, Houston. But I don't know. Like, I think this is exactly the kind of game that you look at, you're frustrated. You should be frustrated. You don't walk away from this going, wow, we're really good. You know, that because like you're saying, Jordan, the best thing you can do is hold on to let me see. The best thing we can hold on to into 2023 is that we definitely know that Justin Fields is the proverbial straw that stirs the drink. That means if we start getting B talent around him, W's go up. Agreed, Jordan. Look, I can't make this clear enough. I'm not going to bat for Luke Getsy. I'm just not dunking on Luke Getsy. I think that there's a very fine line here where you ask yourself, okay, a coach can underperform with an offense. Let me use a good example. The Browns defense is loaded with talent, and especially in the top half of or like the top part of the season, the Browns offense was or the Browns defense. I'm so sorry. I did not mean offense. The Browns defense is loaded with talent and they massively underperformed. That is a huge coaching problem. Another example, the Cincinnati offense, loaded with talent. And in the first half of the season, oh my gosh, they were abysmal. Huge coaching problem. When a bad offense begets bad results, the play calls will not look good either. Do we agree with this? Like when you say the Bears offense scored 13 points against the Buffalo Bills, are we really surprised? Like top level, right? Don't think any deeper than that. Don't think what the first down play looked like. Don't think what the second down play looked like. The Chicago Bears offense scored 13 points at home against the Buffalo Bills. Surprising? I mean, if anything, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I really can't. I would almost tell you that I think that's an improvement over where the Bears have been in the past, where in games like this, they'd score 6 points. They'd score 9 points if we were feeling great. They'd score 10 points, best case scenario. This game, they scored 13. It's not a market improvement, but when bad offense still begets 2 touchdowns, I guess it could be worse, right? No, it didn't. It begetted a touchdown and 2 field goals, but there you go. Look, I'm by no means trying to say this was a banner day. It's not. It was chalk, just like we said on the show. It was exactly what we expected it to be. So, to me, this is a game that in the future, when the Bears do, we hope, get talent on their offense, we can really grade Luke Getsy. We can say he's good, he's bad, right? I don't want to hear people saying Luke Getsy got better, right? Implemented better stuff? Yes. Maybe learned some lessons? Sure. But right now, he's working with dollar store ingredients and he's calling a dollar store offense. Like, you can only do so much with what you're given. Really, you can, especially when you're a first year quarterback. Like Jordan, I know you're still in here, and any other coaches or somebody that thinks this way. When Andy Reid gets dollar store ingredients, at least he's been in Kansas City for so long that he and his quarterback can explain to the dollar store ingredients that they have what they're going to try to do. This is a first year coach given dollar store ingredients with a quarterback in the first year of this offense. So it's a mess from a coordination perspective to even try to get decent results out of. Doesn't mean it's impossible. It's been done, but usually it's been done when you don't call play calls so much as you call players. You say, hey, let's get the ball to Devontae Adams. And he goes and he wins you another one-on-one and you convert a key third down. In this case, who's Luke Getsy turning to? I mean, sure, Justin Fields. That's what everybody's going to say. But when turning to Justin Fields, you got to pick a receiver too. Are we looking at Velus Jones? Are we looking at are we looking at Dante Pettis? Like, do we want Cole Kmet? Like, these are okay third options, fourth options in some cases. I think the more I've really dwelt on it, Cole Kmet would be an awesome wide tight end if he could just stop being the number one threat on some of these passing packages. Like, if you had Cole Kmet catching the same ball that Ryan Griffin couldn't convert a first down on, I don't think that I have any problem with Cole Kmet catching that football and just falling forward instead of allowing himself to hit the ground because he double clutched the ball and didn't convert the first down. I get it. I'm picking on somebody, but I really want to see that throw converted into a first down. It's converted into a first down all the time. And so you get a little bit better talent. You start making things easier on a play caller. Was Nagy a genius on the downs where he'd say, it's third and Allen Robinson? No, but it worked all the same because Allen Robinson was the dude, right? And so as this offense gets more dudes, gets more threats, gets more, honestly, anybody from Gabe Davis to Stephon Diggs. Diggs is obviously the dream, but like just decent players on this offense and a decent offensive line. I can't help but think that the play calling is going to start to look a lot better because right now this passing offense just has no fangs, but I digress. I got to get this podcast edited and posted so that I can make it to church on time. So I will talk to you guys later. Truly have a wonderful holiday season. Merry Christmas, should you be celebrating it. Happy holidays to those who don't have. It's another Bears loss. We got two more games to lose, and then we can talk exclusively about winning. So we'll figure it out. But talk to you guys soon. Bear down, and thanks for bearing with me.